Hi from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. In the next 1 hour, we get you the latest developments across India and the world. We track for you updates from politics, business and sports this Wednesday morning to make sure that your tea or coffee tastes even better. But first, the headlines. India and Qatar elevate ties to a strategic partnership, aim to double the trade to $28 billion in 5 years. President hosts Qatar's Amir at Rashtrapati Bhavan, recalls deep ties between the two nations. US President Trump says he is more confident of Ukraine peace deal after US-Russia talks. Hints at meeting with Putin could happen this month itself. Despite Russia's unacceptance for NATO forces in Ukraine, Trump says US would not oppose Europe sending peacekeepers to Ukraine. Victory for Team Trump after a US judge declines request to temporarily block Elon Musk and Doordarshan team from firing federal employees. Trump fires all Biden-era US attorneys. Pakistan to take on New Zealand in Karachi as it hosts a major ICC cricket tournament in 3 decades as Champions Trophy 2025 kicks off today. US President Donald Trump says that talks between US and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday were very good and that he is now much more confident of a Ukraine peace deal. Trump spoke for the first time since a US delegation established a working dialogue with Russia about Ukraine during talks in Riyadh on Tuesday. Trump said he would probably meet with Putin before the end of this month, but did not elaborate. Trump increased pressure on Zelensky to hold elections, echoing one of Moscow's key demands. He brushed aside Ukraine's concern about being left out of the meeting, saying that Kyiv could have made a peace deal with Russia 3 years ago.
And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their side.
US and Russia agreed to cooperate on ending Ukraine conflict. Landmark Riyadh talks mark a US foreign policy shift under President Trump. A new era of cooperation may emerge. And to talk more on this, we're joined in by Igor Piskunov from Russia Today TV. Igor, good morning. Can you share more insights on the Riyadh meeting's outcomes and what can we expect moving forward?
Well, I'd say the vibe is quite complicated. Maybe even difficult to describe. It was a very long day here in Saudi Arabia. The talks lasted for 4.5 hours and quite a lot came out of them. I have to say that the Saudis made quite an effort to prevent any speculation or leaks from happening as the talks still went on. So then we were basically bombarded by all these various statements after the talks ended coming from both sides. But I think the most important thing that happened here in Saudi Arabia is that Russia and the United States were able to make a very important first step towards normalizing their relations. They've agreed to create mechanisms to normalize the work of their diplomatic missions. Regarding the conflict in Ukraine, they agreed to put together high-level teams on each side which will work together to look for a diplomatic, sustainable solution which would be suitable to all sides. And they're even now starting to look beyond the conflict in Ukraine because they're saying that they want to lay the foundation for future projects in investment and economy, in all these projects which may emerge after the conflict in Ukraine is done. Judging by what we've heard today from representatives of both sides, it was a serious and optimistic conversation. just about a week ago, it was so hard to imagine something like this from happening. But then the phone conversation between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump took place. And now already we're here in Saudi Arabia. We're looking at Moscow and Washington talking and, most importantly, listening to each other, like Foreign Minister Lavrov said. The Trump's administration approach to not only the conflict in Ukraine, but I guess to the relationship with Russia is quite different from the previous administration. I think it also echoes with Russia's foreign minister's words about listening to each other. U.S. Secretary of State Mark Rubio said that this is about dialogue, this isn't about monologue. And he also said that any diplomatic success is possible only with concessions made by all sides.
Riyadh marks a diplomatic coup for Moscow, which had been isolated for 3 years under the previous U.S. administration of Joe Biden. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov noted that Russia opposed any deployment of NATO nation troops to Ukraine as part of an eventual ceasefire. Moscow has long called for the withdrawal of NATO forces from Eastern Europe, viewing the alliance as an existential threat on its flank. Russia sketched out some of its perspectives on future talks, arguing that settling the war required a reorganization of Europe's defense agreements. European allies publicly diverged this week over whether they would be open to sending truce peacekeepers to Ukraine. Though on Tuesday, Trump said he would not oppose Europeans if they want to send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine, adding that United States would not have to contribute.
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine. I mean, I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But yeah, if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all. We're talking about
French President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday announced that he will host another meeting on Ukraine after the talks between the new U.S. administration and Russia. In an interview with French regional newspapers, Macron again appeared open to the idea of sending troops to Ukraine, but emphasized this could take place only in the most limited fashion and away from conflict zones. He said Paris was not preparing to send ground troops, but was considering with its ally Britain sending experts or even troops in limited terms outside any conflict zone. Macron also evoked the idea of deciding within the framework of the negotiations to have under a United Nations mandate a peacekeeping operation which would be held along the front line. He said that the new talks would take place on Wednesday with several European and non-European states. His wide-ranging comments came after US President stunned Europe by appending US policy with a resumption of diplomacy with the Kremlin aimed at agreeing an end to the conflict. All right, our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh joins us from the newsroom. Shubhendu, good morning. Now, with the recent change of guard in the U.S., we also see a change in the U.S. approach with regard to Russia-Ukraine conflict, with Trump hinting at a meeting with the Russian president by the end of this month. Help us understand to what extent will this change in approach by Trump help in resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Good morning, Preeti. That's right. There is a dramatic shift in the manner in which U.S. is approaching the Ukraine conflict now. The statements that have come from the top leadership, from President Trump, in a way squarely putting the blame of the Ukraine conflict on Ukraine itself, that it had 3 years to in fact negotiate peace, and now that United States is taking the lead, Ukraine should not feel left out. Those statements and this first diplomatic exchange meeting with a Russian delegation, this is the first since the Ukraine conflict broke out, mind you. It speaks volumes about the manner in which equations and ties are being reset. 3 separate meetings take place, one in Riyadh, one in Paris, and one in Brussels. And each of them addressing the Ukraine conflict talks about the manner in which new factions have come about. The traditional allies, US and Europe, may be looking in different directions. And there is an opportunity to end the diplomatic isolation of Russia. So those developments are really hinting at the manner in which President Donald Trump wants to take an absolutely new way, and something that addresses all his concerns. He looks at the Ukraine conflict as primarily primarily a conflict taking place in Europe, where America has already invested a significant amount of money and ammunition. It also looks at possibly China as the main adversary and therefore would like to mend ties with other partners, especially as far as Russia is concerned. So in that sense, there is a dramatic shift from the manner in which the Biden administration had approached the Ukraine conflict. And now Donald Trump really also putting in doubt his European allies as to which way should they be looking. And therefore, there comes the Paris meeting where the European leaders met as a part of the security conference, discussing Ukraine and their own security concerns, not finding a table at the negotiations that took place in Riyadh, those initial negotiations. So in that sense, it looks like a scattered plate at the moment. Traditional allies don't seem to be working together, and traditional adversaries have an opportunity to patch up.
All right, Shubhendu, at the same time, when we see a change in the approach of the US, we also see somewhere the European allies are also a little hesitant or skeptical with their approach to the Russia-Ukraine conflict from here on. Though French President Emmanuel Macron has hinted at hosting a second meeting on Ukraine on Wednesday, but at the same time, France has made it clear that they are interested in sending either experts to Ukraine or, for that matter, troops only, not in the conflict zones. So this also talks of somewhere a shift in the stance of the European allies also. How do you gauge that? And having said that, how do you see the European allies approach this from here on with a change in the stance of the US?
Right, Preeti, as I mentioned, that there are two things that are happening. There's a resetting of ties between United States and Russia. And on the other side, the next big story is the manner in which a trust deficit, as it were, is cropping up between the close partnership between the United States and Europe. Now, we know that President Trump looks at America's investment in groups like military alliances like NATO as a disproportionate investment on the part of the US. They would like NATO to invest more in its security infrastructure, invest more as far as the Ukraine conflict is concerned, and therefore not finding a place at the negotiating table in Riyadh. European leaders are concerned about the manner in which United States and Russia could take unilateral decisions about a conflict in which the whole of the continent, the NATO countries, have been invested heavily for the past 3 years. In that sense, it also puts to question their own security arrangement. If the Ukraine conflict, US and Europe are looking in different direction, what happens to Europe's own security concerns? If Russia is emboldened by the step that President Trump is taking at the moment, ending their diplomatic isolation, what happens to the future of European security, and how invested will America be? Traditionally, post the Second World War, America was seen as this the main security provider for the continent of Europe. But now, with President Trump, those dynamics are being put to question. This realignment is something that is unnerving everyone. Even in the meeting in Paris, we saw that the European leaders could not agree on a common solution, common stand, common European stand to the conflict and the way forward. France and UK, for example, were in the favor of putting boots on the ground, have some sort of a peacekeeping troop as part of the peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, whereas Italy and Germany thought it was naive to talk about participating directly in the conflict at a point where they were talking about end to the 3 years of fighting. So in that sense, it is chaotic in the manner in which Europe is trying to articulate its own position in the conflict, and America's new stand is not helping the matters.
All right, so that was about Europe and the US. But then, Shubhendu, in the midst of all this, it's a little too early to evaluate or gauge. But then, which of the two parties, Russia or Ukraine, do you see, getting strength from this change of approach? I mean, like, which side do you see would benefit more with this? Because with Ukraine, not being present in either of the meetings, at the same time, US approaching Russia, how do you gauge the days ahead to pan out, and how do we see the conflict further pan out from here?
If we were to just look at the developments that have taken place in the recent past, Preeti, particularly the the leadership that the United States is taking in proactively trying to end the conflict. There is a certain degree of isolation that President Zelensky and Ukraine are facing at the moment. They have been facing significant losses on the battleground. And here we see that the principal supporter, hitherto, United States, is now holding direct talks with Russia without Ukraine leadership being present on the negotiating table in Riyadh. President Zelensky did mention that it was surprising that such a conversation is taking place. And on the other hand, President Trump, in a way, squarely put the onus on Ukraine that they perhaps had about 3 years to negotiate and find peace. They could not do that. And now US is taking the leadership and will find its own way to end this conflict. In that sense, this patching up between United States and Russia, although these are very early days, and we have to see if this is also some sort of a diplomatic strategic hedge that President Trump is investing in. But even so, a certain attempt at bridging the gap between US and Russia does come as a bad news for Ukraine at a critical point like this, where the future of the Ukraine conflict, Russia-Ukraine conflict, is being decided. And also given that Europe is in disarray, the number of allies backing Ukraine, the overall structure appears to be dwindling as we speak.
All right, Shumendu. So we'll have to wait and watch how these meetings, pan out further, and we'll have to see what would be the repercussions. Thank you so much for joining in with the details this morning. You're watching DD India News Hour. That was our correspondent Shumendu explaining to us what can be expected ahead with regard to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But we've got still lots more to track. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, Trump to introduce 25% tariffs on autos, pharmaceuticals, and chips. German voters decide on 23 February who will run their next government. Pope Francis has double pneumonia. Condition remains complex.
This week on Defense Dynamics, India navigates high-stakes global defense deals. Modi's France visit unlocks strategic technology, so what is it for India's fighter jets? Trump offers F-35 stealth fighters. Are they the game changer or geopolitical dilemma? The world leaders debate AI weapons. Can the regulations keep the lethal innovation in check? And India's Raksha Kavach, how it fortifies national security against modern threats. Catch it all this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Israel has said that it will begin negotiations on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal, but made it clear that Gaza will have to be completely demilitarized. On the other hand, Egypt postponed the Arab League meeting on Gaza to March 4th, which was initially planned for next week. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed that Hamas will hand over 4 hostage bodies on Thursday and release 6 hostages over the weekend. DD India's Raghav Kumar Jha has more on this.
As the uncertainty looms large over the future of Gaza, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said on Tuesday that Israel will begin negotiations on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. He demanded complete demilitarization of the area and said Israel is also committed to its goal to ensure the release of all hostages and meeting other objectives of the war. Sa'ar made it clear that Israel would not support any plan that would see civilian control of Gaza transferred from Hamas to the Palestinian Authority.
We decided to open negotiations on the second phase. It will happen this week. We demand complete demilitarization of Gaza. We will not accept the continued presence of Hamas or any other terrorist groups in Gaza.
Negotiations for the second phase of the deal were supposed to have started before the first phase ends on March 2nd, but Qatar said the talks have not officially started yet. Former Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry, Alon Liel, said the Arab world and the rest of the international community are yet to present an alternative to the Israeli-backed US plan for Gaza. He said a plan from Arab leaders must clearly outline the roles of Palestinian and Arab countries, as well as the rest of the world, in the rebuilding and running of Gaza. Egypt announced on Tuesday that it has postponed an extraordinary Arab League meeting on Gaza on March 4th, which was initially planned for next week. The meeting has been called in response to US President Donald Trump's proposal to take over the war-battered Gaza Strip and displace its Palestinian inhabitants. Jordan's King Abdullah II reiterated his country's steadfast position against the displacement of Palestinians.
في زيارتي لواشنطن.
Unfortunately, what they don't understand or they can't understand. Let me reiterate our firm position: no to displacement in Gaza and the West Bank, and the reconstruction of Gaza without displacement. I stress the importance of working to reduce the escalation in the West Bank, and that a just and comprehensive peace based on the two-state solution is the only way to achieve stability in the region.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed that a deal with Hamas was reached in Cairo on Tuesday. Accordingly, Hamas will hand over 4 hostage bodies on Thursday and release 6 Israeli hostages over the weekend. Raghav Kumar Jha for DD India.
Donald Trump's administration scored a victory when a judge ruled in its favor in a challenge by Democratic attorneys general from a group of states to the authority of the Republican president's chief government cost-cutter, Elon Musk. Washington-based U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan denied their request for an order barring billionaire Tesla CEO Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, from accessing computer systems at federal agencies or directing firings of government workers while the litigation plays out. The attorneys general argued that their ability to carry out educational and other programs were at risk. They accused Musk's team of unlawfully accessing data at federal agencies and directing a purge of the 2.3 million strong federal workforce. The lawsuit was filed by more than a dozen states and announced by state attorneys general from New Mexico, Michigan, and Arizona. DOGE was formed by Trump. It has swept through federal agencies, slashing thousands of jobs and dismantling various programs since Trump returned to office last month, and put Musk in charge of rooting out what they see as wasteful spending as part of the president's dramatic overhaul of the government. US President Donald Trump announced his plans to impose auto tariffs in the neighborhood of 25% and similar duties on semiconductors and pharmaceuticals imports, the latest in a series of measures threatening to upend international trade. On Friday, Trump said that levies on automobiles would come as soon as April 2nd, the day after members of his cabinet are due to deliver reports to him outlining options for a range of import duties as he seeks to reshape global trade. Trump has long pointed to what he calls unfair treatment of U.S. automotive exports in foreign markets. Since his inauguration 4 weeks ago, Trump has imposed a 10% tariff on all imports from China on top of the existing levies over China's failure to halt fentanyl trafficking. He also announced and then delayed for a month 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and non-energy imports from Canada. US President Donald Trump has instructed the Justice Department to terminate all remaining Biden-era US attorneys, asserting that the department had been politicized like never before. Trump on Truth Social posted, and I quote, "We must clean the house immediately and restore confidence. America's golden age must have a fair justice system that begins today," and I unquote. Last week, the White House sent in termination notices to several U.S. attorneys around the country who had been appointed by Democratic former President Joe Biden. On Monday, several U.S. attorneys appointed by Biden announced that they were stepping down. Others left the government last week. German voters will choose their next government on 23rd of February, with key issues such as immigration control and reviving the EU's largest economy taking center stage in the snap election. We get to a detailed report explaining more on this.
Germany heads to snap national elections on Feb 23rd following the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition. But what are the key issues and how are people reacting? The Russia-Ukraine conflict is on the agenda of Germany's election. The mainstream parties are all in favor of helping Ukraine fend off Russia's attack, while the AfD and PSW want an end to weapons delivery to Kyiv and a resumption of good relations with Moscow.
I think one of the things that moves people in Germany most might be the topic of migration, because not necessarily on their own accounts, but because it's a topic that has been raised by all of the major parties, and thus has set a movement into place with the people as well. It is a topic that is very important for every one of us, but the way that it's discussed, it's not often the optimal way.
Many migrants have expressed a desire to integrate and contribute to society.
Германия очень помогает украинцам.
Germany helps the Ukrainians a lot, but the Ukrainians have to help Germany too. One simply can't always live at the expense of the state that feeds you for years. People have to start work and make their contribution.
Начинать какую-то лепту вносить.
Economy is another key issue in Germany. In Gelsenkirchen, the signs of a downturn are visibly everywhere. While the city played a big part in Germany's post-war economic miracle, the rot set in with the decline of coal and heavy industry in the 1960s. The population tumbled from 390,000 then to just 260,000 now, as the local economy cratered. Now the German voters here demand change as Europe's biggest economy stalls.
Also ich glaube einfach, dass unsere
I just believe that our last government did a lot of things wrong, starting with the industry and energy policies and many other factors. That's why I'm almost certain that no matter what the new government will do, it will be possible to get out of this hole, and that we will manage to create jobs again and to adequately address energy policy issues which people can actually afford.
High energy prices remain a formidable challenge for households and businesses in Germany.
We need to discuss the further transformation of our energy system while respecting companies' different need and their energy requirement. Here the state must put the relevant infrastructure at the forefront.
Every candidate who wins one of Germany's 299 constituencies is guaranteed a seat. To fill the other half of the 598 seats in Germany's Bundestag, voters cast their votes in the second vote, or Zweitstimme. This vote goes to a political party instead of a single candidate. Bureau Report, DD India.
South Korean Constitutional Court will hold the first formal hearing of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment trial on Wednesday. Prime Minister Han took over the role of acting president after President Yoon was impeached by Parliament following his failed attempt to impose martial law on 3rd of December. Han was impeached by the opposition-controlled Assembly on December 27th after refusing to appoint additional justices to the Constitutional Court ahead of its review of President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment over his December 3rd declaration of martial law. The impeachment motion against Han also accused him of plotting or abetting an insurrection through the short-lived imposition of martial law. The court is expected to focus solely on whether the former Prime Minister violated the Constitution by aiding Yoon in his alleged insurrection attempt without examining potential criminal law violations. Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, was charged on a plot to overturn his 2022 election laws. The office of the country's top prosecutor announced in a legal document released on Tuesday. General Prosecutor Paulo Gonet filed the charges against the former far-right leader, along with a few of his former ministers, to Brazil's Supreme Court after the federal police lodged accusations of the plot last November. The charges represent a fresh blow for Bolsonaro that further complicates his already narrow hopes of a political comeback. Bolsonaro, a former army captain, has repeatedly denied breaking any laws and calls allegations against him a witch hunt by his political opponents. His defense lawyers did not immediately respond to a request for comments outside the normal business hours. Zoran Milanovic was inaugurated as Croatia's president for a second term on Tuesday. The inauguration ceremony began with the Croatian national anthem, followed by Milanovic taking the presidential oath, promising to serve the nation. The event featured musical performances with former presidents and military leaders in attendance. In his address, he emphasized on Croatia's national security, economic challenges, and the importance of independent institutions. Milanovic called for more investment in domestic industry and warned against excessive military spending. The Croatian head of state is a largely ceremonial post, cannot veto laws, but has a say in foreign policy, defense and security matters. The International Atomic Energy Agency chief, Rafael Grossi, will visit Japan's Fukushima Daiichi plant on Wednesday. The UN nuclear watchdog chief, who arrived in Japan on Tuesday, will visit the storage facilities for vast quantities of soil contaminated in the 2011 Fukushima disaster for the first time. He will also be shown some of the 13 million cubic meters of soil and 300,000 cubic meters of ash from the incinerated organic material. Japan plans to recycle roughly 75% of the removed soil, the portion found to have low radioactivity levels. If this material is confirmed safe, the government wants to use it for building embankments for roads and railways, among other projects. The remaining soil will be disposed of outside Fukushima region ahead of a 2045 deadline. The UN nuclear watchdog is monitoring the decades-long process to decommission the Fukushima Daiichi plant, which went into meltdown after being hit by a tsunami in the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Pope Francis has been diagnosed with double pneumonia after further tests showed a continuing complex medical situation. Dozens of faithful prayed for Pope Francis's recovery outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital. Francis has been suffering from a respiratory infection for more than a week now and was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on February 14th. He is especially prone to lung infections because as a young adult, he developed pleurisy and had part of one lung removed. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for a short break. But after the break, former British Premier Rishi Sunak and family met Prime Minister Modi, praised as great friend of India during the visit to Delhi. Gyanesh Kumar to take over as the new Chief Election Commissioner on February 19th. And over 55 crore devotees have taken the holy dip at Triveni Sangam till now at Mahakumbh 2025 in Prayagraj.
Timeless, boundless and infinite, the essence of faith, the soul of Sanatan culture, from the sacred confluence of Prayag, where divinity descends to earth. Witness the grandeur, the devotion, the magic, world's largest cultural and spiritual gathering, with over 450 million devotees expected to attend. Mahakumbh, India's greatest festival of faith. Exclusively on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Amir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit to India is aimed at strengthening growing partnership between the two nations. Narendra Modi's Middle East outreach has marked a significant transformation in India's foreign policy, characterized by proactive engagement, strategic partnership and diversified cooperation. Our next report by Jessica Taneja brings you more on this.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi breaking protocol to personally receive the Amir of Qatar as he touched down in New Delhi for his state visit. The warm gesture by the Indian Prime Minister highlighted the growing ties between New Delhi and Doha. The high-profile visit of Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani highlights the strengthening ties between India and Qatar, two nations bound by history, trade and diplomacy. On the second day of his two-day visit, the Amir of Qatar, Tamim, received the Guard of Honor and a ceremonial welcome in the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan on Tuesday. He was received by President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with senior ministers from the government.
His Highness the Amir of Qatar is accompanied by a high-level delegation comprising ministers, senior officials, and business leaders. The dignitaries who are accompanying His Highness include Qatar's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, as well as the Ministers of Commerce and Industry, Energy, Electronics and Information Technology, Labour, and the Minister of State for Foreign Trade.
Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Emir at Hyderabad House in New Delhi. India and Qatar elevated their ties to strategic partnership as the two sides signed MOU, including on double tax avoidance and prevention of fiscal evasions with respect to taxes on income. With bilateral trade surpassing $14 billion in 2023-24, Qatar remains India's largest supplier of liquid natural gas, fueling the country's growing energy needs. In return, India exports a range of goods from food and textiles to engineering products. This visit is expected to pave the way for new agreements deepening this economic partnership.
The partnership, which rests on the foundation of trust, trade, and tradition. We have a very strong historical legacy, starting right from the old times when we had the Silk Route. But today, we live in a new world, a new age, where we are rewriting the terms of trade. We are rewriting the way business will be conducted. In fact, we are creating new Silk Age routes, whether it's the IMEC, whether it's the newer technologies that we are engaged with.
Qatar's Minister of State for Foreign Trade Affairs, Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed Al Saeed, highlighted the strong partnership between India and Qatar during Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit. He emphasized collaboration in trade, technology, and investment, particularly in non-oil sectors, to strengthen bilateral ties.
The world today is changing dramatically in terms of trade and business, the apply of technology and AI. Qatar also enhancing the landscape of attractiveness of investment. We are welcoming Indian business people. We are encouraging our business society, government and public sector to invest more in India and to create more partnership.
But beyond trade, defense and security cooperation, the two nations share intelligence on counterterrorism, and India regularly participates in Qatar's maritime defense exhibitions. Recent agreements have bolstered cooperation in cybersecurity, port management, and skill development. Another key pillar of this relationship is the Indian diaspora. Over 800,000 Indians live and work in Qatar, contributing to its development. Their welfare remains a priority in bilateral talks. Jessica Taneja's report for DD India.
President Draupadi Murmu hailed India-Qatar ties, which she said are reflected even in food, while addressing a dinner hosted by Rashtrapati Bhavan in honor of Amir of the State of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit to India.
महामहिम, आपकी ये यात्रा हमारी ऐतिहासिक संबंध और मैत्री में एक महत्वपूर्ण पड़ाव है। दोनों देशों के बीच विशेष संबंध रहे जो बेहद घनिष्ठ और जीवंत है। पारंपरिक जोलियानों, जिन्हें ढो के रूप में जाना जाता है, न परंपराएं, वस्तुएं, विचारों और सांस्कृतिक नीतियों के आदान प्रदान द्वारा सदियों से दोनों देशों को आपस में जोड़े रखा है। कतार में रहने वाले भारतीय समुदाय ने कतार को अपना दूसरा घर बना लिया है और वे स्थानीय समाज में सरलता से घुल मिल गए हैं। मैं इन मेज़बानी और उनकी इतनी अच्छी देखभाल के लिए आपकी और कतार के लोगों के हृदय से आभारी हूँ।
India's ties with West Asia have undergone a historic transformation under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership. From economic partnerships to cultural diplomacy, India has reinvigorated its relations with the region like never before. And the latest visit of Qatar's Amir is yet another testament to this deepening engagement. Our correspondent reports on this.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi breaking protocol to personally receive the Emir of Qatar as he touched down in Delhi for a state visit. The warm gesture by the Indian Prime Minister highlighted the importance given by the country to the region and the growing ties between New Delhi and West Asia. Earlier in December, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also visited Kuwait, becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to visit the Gulf nation in over 40 years. Since 2014, several such steps have been taken by the Indian government to foster closer ties between the two regions. Over a decade, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited several countries in the Gulf region, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iran, UAE, Jordan, and others, cementing historic ties between the two regions. For decades, West Asia has been central to India's strategic and economic interests, but under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, these ties have deepened like never before. Trade, energy security, infrastructure, and cultural diplomacy. India's outreach has been multifaceted. India's trade with Gulf region now stands at a staggering $160 to $180 billion annually, with over 9 million Indians living and working in these nations. The Gulf also acts as a gateway to the larger Middle East and North African and Mediterranean region, where India's trade is another $80 billion.
Prime Minister Modi has made great personal efforts for transforming India's relationship with all the countries of the Middle East region, and especially with the Gulf states. And this has happened steadily ever since he became Prime Minister of India in 2014. The relationships with all the Gulf countries were focused mainly on energy, trade, and the Indian expatriates. But now the relationship has evolved into a new framework encompassing political relations, investment, and defense and security cooperation.
A game changer in this partnership is the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, a massive infrastructure project connecting India to the Gulf and further to Europe. Announced on the sidelines of India's G20 presidency, the corridor is expected to revolutionize trade and connectivity.
Over the last decade, we've had a series of high-level visits between India and the Middle East countries, including the GCC. We've also seen a renewed focus from the GCC on India, mainly because of the economic opportunities that India offers, and at the same time, the interest that India has shown in reaching out to the GCC. I feel that, going forward, the GCC and the Middle East countries will be interested in the new age economy in India, investing in that and making sure that they can tap into India's potential.
Beyond economics, PM Modi also strengthened cultural and people-to-people ties. On February 14, 2024, he inaugurated the first Hindu temple in the region, the Baps Temple in Abu Dhabi, symbolizing a new chapter in cultural harmony between India and the UAE. Diplomatically, India's engagement with the Gulf Cooperation Council has surged, with bilateral trade touching $161 billion in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. The region is now a major investment partner, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which have pledged billions in infrastructure and energy projects in India. As both regions evolve, India's Middle East strategy under PM Modi has laid a strong foundation for enduring and mutually beneficial relations. With key partnerships strengthening, the future looks promising for India's engagement with the region. With deepening economic ties and strategic collaborations, India's presence in the Middle East is stronger than ever. The foundation laid today will shape a future of mutual prosperity and cooperation. From New Delhi, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador P. Harish, reaffirmed on Tuesday that Jammu and Kashmir is and will always remain an integral part of India and strongly condemned Pakistan's misinformation campaigns. The Indian envoy also emphasized on the democratic choice made by the people of Jammu and Kashmir in the Legislative Assembly elections after Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar raised the Kashmir issue at the UNSC.
I would like to reaffirm that Jammu and Kashmir has been, is, and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. In fact, it is Pakistan that is in illegal occupation of parts of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's campaigns of misinformation and disinformation, of lies and falsehood do not change facts on the ground. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have only last year taken part in a successful election and have voted in large numbers to choose their government. The choice of the people of Jammu and Kashmir was loud and clear. Democracy in Jammu and Kashmir is vibrant and strong, unlike in Pakistan.
Former British Premier Rishi Sunak and his family on Tuesday called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the national capital. Prime Minister Narendra Modi praised Sunak as a great friend of India. Sharing pictures on social media platform X, Prime Minister said, and I quote him, "It was a delight to meet former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his family. We had a wonderful conversation on many subjects. Sunak is a great friend of India and is passionate about even stronger India-UK ties," and unquote. Sunak was accompanied by his mother-in-law Sudha Murthy, an author and Rajya Sabha MP, and other family members. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also met Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, and the two discussed potential new avenues to strengthen market-based financial ties and also drive economic growth. The Finance Minister stressed on the importance of leveraging the Commonwealth to bring issues of mutual interest to the G7 agenda for the benefit of the Global South. Gyanesh Kumar will take charge as the Chief Election Commissioner of India on Wednesday. Gyanesh Kumar is the first CEC to be appointed under the new law on appointment of the members of Election Commission. He took over as Election Commissioner in the Election Commission of India on 15th of March 2024. He is a 1988 batch Kerala cadre officer of the IAS. As an IAS, Kumar had served departments including Finance, Resources, Fast Track Projects, PWD. Gyanesh Kumar has also previously worked as a Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Defence, Joint Secretary and Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Secretary in the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, and Secretary in the Ministry of Cooperation. The Mahakumbh 2025 in Prayagraj has drawn an overwhelming number of devotees to the sacred Triveni Sangam, the confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, and the mythical Saraswati rivers. Displaying unwavering faith and devotion, more than 55 crore pilgrims have taken the dip already, seeking spiritual purification and blessings. Even after the completion of the three main Amrit Snans, Makar Sankranti, Mauni Amavasya and Basant Panchami, the enthusiasm of pilgrims remains undiminished. People from across India and the world continue to arrive daily, making the Mahakumbh a global spiritual spectacle. The Mahakumbh 2025 is not just a religious gathering, but a reflection of the rich spiritual heritage and enduring faith of millions. As the sacred waters of the Triveni Sangam witness history, the event continues to inspire devotion, unity, and cultural pride. All right, on to updates from the world of business now. Spain's biggest bank, Santander, announced investments totaling more than $2 billion over the next 3 years in Mexico, hailing the country's enormous potential despite trade tensions with the US. The group unveiled the launch of its fully digital bank, Open Bank, in Latin America's second largest economy, which is wooing investors in the face of the threatened US tariffs. Last month, Mexican President Sheinbaum presented a plan aimed at turning Mexico into the world's 10th largest economy with an ambitious goal of luring $277 billion of investment. Up next, we get you updates from the world of sports. The 2025 Champions Trophy will start off with hosts and defending champions Pakistan facing New Zealand at the National Stadium in Karachi. Pakistan is all set to host its first major cricket tournament in nearly 3 decades as the tournament kicks off. The two sides faced each other just days earlier in the final of a tri-series tournament that ended up being a dry run for this event. Judging by the form exhibited by the two sides in that match and that series overall, New Zealand can feel very good about their chances indeed. Pakistan, on the other hand, have a few worries to deal with, as one defeat in the Champions Trophy is enough for the side's chances of progression to plummet. All right, Abhishek Mahajan joins us from the national capital. Abhishek, good morning. The Champions Trophy is all set to begin. What are the highlights that we look forward to? What are the interesting contests that we look forward to?
Yes, Preeti, good morning. The stage is set for the Champions Trophy. Narratives are in motion and the focus will be on the performance now. And yes, Preeti, the global gaze will be on Pakistan, their competence, whether they can hold the multinational tournament. We all know what happened Pakistan because of several reasons. They could not host the tournament in the last 3 decades. Last time in 1996, if you remember, they co-hosted the tournament along with India and Sri Lanka back in 1996, the Cricket World Cup, 50-over Cricket World Cup. But yes, they are the defending champions. That's true. The tournament was scrapped after 2017 when Pakistan won the Champions Trophy in 2017. So the tournament is happening after 8 years now, and Pakistan will be playing at home. Pressure will be on them. They have renovated their stadiums also, the National Stadium in Karachi and Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. The stage is all set. And the tournament is not that big, Preeti. 8 teams are taking part. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they all are in the same group. It's an interesting group. India, Pakistan, the big ticket tournament, the big ticket match, I should say, will be played on 23rd, and India will start their campaign on 20th tomorrow against Bangladesh. But yes, the first match, the start of the tournament, the match will be played against between New Zealand and Pakistan. And like we said in the report also, New Zealand defeated Pakistan in the tri-series, which included South Africa also. They defeated Pakistan in the league game also, and then in the finals also. So Pakistan will definitely be under pressure looking at how New Zealand has been performing. But yes, the first match will set the tone for Pakistan and also for the New Zealand.
All right, Abhishek. Now India steps into the Champions Trophy without Jasprit Bumrah. What are the other surprises with regard to other teams, participating teams that that can be seen? And also Sunday would be a very crucial day for all the cricket fans. India face Pakistan, but then put all this together, tell us, this would be a very important match to look forward to, but then what are the changes that that could be seen in not just Indian team but also the other teams that are participating?
Yes, Preeti, you mentioned about Jasprit Bumrah. It's not a small hole, it's a big gaping hole. Jasprit Bumrah will not be part of the Champions Trophy. India, Mohammad Shami has come back, but he doesn't look in that lethal form that he was in 2023 World Cup, where he took more than 20 wickets in 7 games. He was literally unplayable. Arshdeep Singh is there. Harshit Rana is the replacement of Jasprit Bumrah. And interestingly, Preeti, India, they have gone in with 5 spinners. Akshar Patel and Ravindra Jadeja, yes, definitely, they will be part of the 11. Who will be the third spinner? Whether they will go in with the third spinner, it will be interesting to see. They can go in with Kuldeep Yadav or Varun Chakravarti. But yes, Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma will be in the limelight. It will be a big tournament for them, looking at how they have been performing in test matches and T20s. Test matches have their own challenges, T20 also, and it's a preferred format also for Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma will open the batting with Shubman Gill. Virat Kohli will come at number 3. Shreyas Iyer will be at 4, who looks in good form. It will be interesting to see whether Rohit Sharma goes in with KL Rahul as a wicketkeeper or Rishabh Pant. Hardik Pandya will be the all-rounder. So India has a good team, Preeti. They are the most successful team also in the Champions Trophy. If you look at the stats, India have won 18 matches out of 29 they have played in the Champions Trophy. They have won the Champions Trophy twice also in 2013. And then in the captaincy of MS Dhoni, and 2002 also they were declared the joint winners along with Sri Lanka. But yes, India look in good form. Likes of Shubman Gill, Shreyas Iyer have been performing well. Bowling wise, yes, they look a little weak, but yes, it will be interesting to see how they perform in the match against Bangladesh. So, like I said before also, the first match will set the tone. And yes, like you mentioned, the big ticket match between India and Pakistan, it's all sold out. The match will be played in Dubai, and India's matches all the matches are being played in Dubai. But yes, first match will be very interesting against Bangladesh, and yes, it will set the tone. And India have played most of the knockout tournaments. India have played maximum finals, and yes, they'll get a good competition from New Zealand. They look good. Australia look a little depleted. The likes of Josh Hazelwood, Mitchell Stark, in fact, the captain also, Pat Cummins, is also not part of the tournament. But yes, you can't write off Australia. They generally perform well in big tournaments. In New Zealand also, like I mentioned, you can't write them off in the ICC tournaments. So it will be interesting tournament. Matches start today. Big match today between New Zealand and Pakistan.
All right, so that was about the prospects of the teams participating. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for that insight. All right, clear blue skies and bright sunshine following recent snowfall turned mountains in eastern China into a veritable winter wonderland, becoming a focal point for the tourists. Take a look at these beautiful visuals. That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us at Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.